Another thing I want to point out is actual battery life. A lot of people want to know what it is. I've already mentioned that it's pretty much on par with what Sony has quoted, that 8 to 9 hours. Heavy use, if you're just watching video and you've got brightness cranked up, you're going to get around, I would say, 7 to 8. Again, it really depends on what's running, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, you name it. So that's important to note. Also, the really big criticism, though, with the battery life, because I don't see that battery life as being disappointing considering what this package has to offer, not only in terms of how great this screen is, but more importantly, the form factor. I don't, people complain about the size of the battery. I don't know how Sony fit it in there, frankly. Some people still think they should have been able to put a larger battery in just because of the sheer size. But this tablet overall does represent an engineering feat in itself. So I think that's a false criticism, really, or an empty one. But the real critique with battery life isn't its actual life itself, but the charging time. It is painful. You're looking at 6 to 7 hours to charge this. So when you're 2 or 3 days of use, depending on what type of user you are, it may only be 1 day of use, do plan to charge this overnight. It is mandatory, because if you try to charge this during the day, you'll be waiting all day to use it. Now, I do want to point out, you can somewhat rectify the charging debacle by picking up the stand, the charging cradle, which is $45. That cradle will charge with the metal contacts that are on the left side of the tablet, and it does charge more rapidly. The downside, however, is that accessory does not include its own AC adapter and cable. You'll have to use the one that came originally with your Z. I do think that Sony made a poor move there. It's not a huge criticism, but at the price of that accessory, they really should have included the actual ability to charge the dock without the single cable originally included. It's really a little bit too much of cost cutting, in my opinion, considering the inconvenience that it presents to users that are already paying top dollar for what does represent right now the best tablet on the market that money can buy. So that's really what it comes down to in terms of the charging area. I spoke already about the Flex, but another thing I want to talk about is the back side of the tablet, because I know I'm not the only person that has reported this, and I mentioned it in a response to a user, one of you that asked. Essentially, right here to the left of the Xperia branding, when I'm holding the tablet naturally, not pressing it like I'm about to demonstrate it for you guys, it pops, almost as if the glue on the back end has given, whether it's a result of heat, because this tablet does get hot, not really any more so than anything else on the market, but that's probably what has happened here, is that the back side of this, or the inside of the back, has unglued itself. So as a result, there's a bit of play. So let's see if you guys can pick it up. I'll be quiet and actually just give it a press. Seems like all the microphone is picking up is my fingers, but I can assure you basically what it is that there's probably a millimeter of play there, and essentially when you're holding the tablet, you'll often feel like this is actually moving, or you're feeling components on the back side. Now, this isn't on every tablet, so I can tell you guys in advance, don't be worried that every tablet has that problem. That's why I'm saying it does seem to be an issue with just glue separation. Does that speak to high quality control? I don't think it's actually a knock in QC. I think it's more of just part of the compromise with this design. When you're going for the thinnest, lightest tablet in the world, especially in the 10.1 inch class, obviously, which is the largest right now, at least that has been accepted widely, then there's going to be some compromise. And in this department, specifically, that seems to be where the compromise was made. That plastic backing is really nice. However, that seems to be the one downfall. Otherwise, this tablet is rock solid. It doesn't physically flex. It's basically as rigid as a tablet is in the marketplace. You're not going to pick this up and feel like you're holding a toy or a piece of junk, despite the fact that it's the lightest tablet in its class. And there's a lot to be said for that, because usually when you use plastics the way Sony has, you can end up feeling like you have a toy. Much like many of Samsung's products, despite the fact that they've got bleeding edge tech, there's a reason they're moving to metallic bodies. They know that's one of the biggest critiques of their product lines, not performance, but just the physical build. So Sony's got the build right here. If you're going to use plastic, they've done everything right. I also want to point out, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the screen does have that protective shatterproof shield on it. I'm not sure that that does wonders though for scratch resistance. So I do recommend getting a screen protector for this that will also cut down on the fingerprints. But overall, despite the fact that it's a high gloss screen, it does end up, when you're watching films, with a relatively matte finish. And I know that that may not seem to make sense, but trust me, once you get one of these in hand, you'll notice exactly what I'm talking about. I've told you guys just about everything that you need to know. There really is very little to dislike about this tablet. At the end of the day, what it really comes down to is that, unfortunately, you know, the processor leaves me with having to recommend that those of you who can wait should. Because as I mentioned earlier in the video, while the Tablet Z right now is the best 10.1-inch Android tablet and arguably best tablet on the market in my opinion because of its flexibility and power, it is very soon to be outperformed by Toshiba, Asus, basically everybody in the business. So whether you want to go with something like the brand new Infinity or Toshiba's tablet or the new Nexus 10 which will launch or the new Galaxy Note 10 which is going to launch, all of those tablets are going to have higher res screens and faster processors. But the one thing I can assure you is they're not going to have the water resistance or the form factor that this tablet has. So really, I fear that the only thing this tablet will end up being valued for is that form factor, water resistance, and fabulous screen. Now, those aren't bad things, but that really is the bottom line with the Tablet Z. In a month from now, who knows, even 2 weeks from now, we could be talking about the latest and greatest that just really makes this look like it's from another generation. However, for most of you out there who aren't going to be gaming, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, or not gaming, but not looking to get the best gaming performance from a tablet, and it's really more important to get the basic features and for things to just work, this tablet is going to have staying power. And again, if the form factor design is what you're after, no one is going to beat this, at least in the pure tablet design arena. The Transformer is a completely unique design. The Note certainly attempts to be completely unique. Toshiba now trying to reinvent themselves, and I wish them the best of luck. So everybody out there is coming to the table. Things have slowed down in the tablet sector, but they're about to heat up. So if you must buy a tablet now, you know, you're about to go on a trip, whatever it may be, and you just have been waiting and you don't want to wait anymore and you're on last gen, I can guarantee you will not have any regrets picking up the Xperia Tablet Z. But if you can wait, I have to still recommend that you do so. And if you find yourself still attracted to the form factor, the water resistance, and the overall package that Sony has put together, the good news is the price will have dropped. And because this is a $500 and $600 price tablet here in the United States for the, of course, Wi-Fi version, no LTE, nothing carrier subsidized yet, the point is that paying that price, you really do need to get something that's going to last. And this will. So despite the fact that it's got that S4, which I would like to see an 800, or, of course, a Tegra 4, sadly, Sony did break that relationship with NVIDIA on this generation. It's still going to have, I would say, a very solid position going ahead. And that's important for those of you who are looking to make a tablet last. So don't worry, even though it doesn't have the latest and greatest processor, it's going to be able to hang for quite a while. But for those of you who are always on the bleeding edge and must have the fastest chip, I can't recommend this tablet just because it would be totally unconscionable considering that the Tegra 4, as I've continued to mention, and the 800 are really eminent. I mean, we just saw the 800 benchmark the other day, really neck and neck with the 4, but the Tegra 4 slightly outperforming it, especially in the graphics department. So this is a solid gaming device. Don't misinterpret me in any way. In fact, I'm going to show you guys right now as part of the review within settings, part of the Xperia experience, because that is important. And the first thing you'll notice is you do have DualShock 3 certification right out of the box. And really, this is a console. Don't misinterpret anything about it. You know, the Shield project from NVIDIA is a Tegra 4i based Android console, really a tablet that can do mirroring, and this device can mirror as well. And it does have direct support, as I just showed you guys, for the DualShock 3, and that's fantastic if you're a gamer. I mean, what more could you really ask for? This is something no other tablet has. Clearly, Shield, a completely different concept, but in terms of performance, yeah, it'll be a better gaming device, but every Android tablet is only as good as the available, or I should say any tablet is only as good as the actual available game library. So let's keep things in perspective. Even though the Shield is going to be a better gaming device and it's not really comparable to a tablet, I'm speaking strictly from a hardware and well, yeah, strictly from a hardware perspective. I'll even put aside the fact that it's got a gaming controller, because here you can just use your PS3 controller. So that's really, really convenient, something I really like about this tablet, and I think that it's another value-oriented feature that a lot of people will like. And many of you will say, well, I could really just hook up any, you know, Xbox 360 controller. That's not a big deal. But for the average user that doesn't want to, or I should say already owns a PS3 controller, which Sony, of course, is marketing towards with their own product line, that's definitely something that should have been there on the last gen. So good to see that. Of course, PlayStation certification, there is an about there, but nothing really to say. The whole idea is that this is clearly a certified device. Screen mirroring, important because this is part of this new gen, and the S4 is really one of the first chips that solidly handles this, and that's not to say that the mirroring on other devices like the Nexus 10 isn't as competent, but there's no question the S4 is a better chip, in my opinion, than the dual-core chip in the older N10. The Nexus 10 processor is an A15 chip, but dual-core, so I can't really tell you guys that it outperforms this. They are really, really close, but this does have a slight edge. But when it comes to screen mirroring, that's when the 800 and the Tegra 4i are really going to shine, if you're comparing this to the generation of tablets that I can't even say are around the corner, because that's usually like literally a quarter, a business quarter away. But here we're talking about weeks or a single month. In terms of throw settings, that's part of the NFC marketing here, of being able to, you know, throw a video onto your respective device, or, you know, just by tapping, which is a cool feature. Basically, beyond that, USB connectivity. This is just, again, lending to the fact that this tablet is far more flexible than what Sony has presented in the past, and that is really significant for even the average user, in my opinion. Wi-Fi connectivity, I've seen tablets pick up more Wi-Fi networks. I'll point that out right now. But overall performance has been solid, not experiencing any disconnects. No random reboots on this tablet, everything very solid. I do recommend going with the 16 gig version. Save your money, get a micro SD card if you don't already have one for the storage expansion. The $100 premium, I feel, is overpriced for a simple double in memory, despite the fact that you are looking at a 32 gig white version here. Also, in terms of other things to note, I'll jump back into settings actually. I mean, clearly everything here looks just as it did in the previous gen of Sony Skin. The launcher is relatively smooth. I also want to show you guys regarding sound, because I didn't mention the audio performance. The Xperia Tablet S, the predecessor to this tablet, had some of the strongest audio from any tablet on the market. This tablet takes that to another level, and that's because it has 4 speakers. We've got 2 on the side right here and 2 on the bottom. And really what that does is accommodate that no matter how you're holding the tablet, you're going to get some solid output. Furthermore, beyond that, it also will allow for 3D sound in the event that there actually is a way to utilize that. And I've noticed that in certain movies that I've played back that have actual 5.1 sound, the audio environment, the experience does actually change. And as you can see, Sony has several of their own processing enhancements that you can use, and they work. There's no question they do offer a different experience. So I think that's a cool feature, something that generally is gimmicking or is a gimmick that is being used that really doesn't necessarily deliver on performance, but here, thankfully, it does. In terms of the display, as I mentioned in my last review, the Mobile Bravia engine, many will argue, is just marketing, and quite frankly, I don't really care whether it is. What I do know is that this screen is the best on the market, so whether or not it's really making a difference or just oversaturating things, I'm not so concerned with. The brightness on this device right now is full max. If I take it down to the lowest setting, you can see fingerprints galore return. So definitely very bright in its class, no question about it. The tap to wake up feature I mentioned earlier in the video, right there. You do have a notification light, something I didn't mention, which I should, which you can turn on or off. It's located right by the power button, and essentially that will indicate charging, and of course whether or not you have a notification, email, etc. That's something good to see incorporated into the tablet, something that indicates that Sony's acknowledging that you still need some form of an indicator, something many tablet manufacturers have abandoned. Storage, I've already mentioned you guys. Power management, they do have some applications, I shouldn't say applications, but built-in methods to improve stamina, and they work. There's no question about it. I do not use the low battery mode, but the stamina mode is functional if you're not worried about getting the best performance available. I've already showed you guys the Xperia suite, which did not exist on the previous generation of even the last Xperia branded tablet, but I've made it really clear, even though that was branded an Xperia tablet, it really wasn't, at least if this is what Xperia is all about, which I think it is, since this is basically a mirror version of their Xperia Z phone, except a much better screen and obviously much bigger form factor, and overall a better piece of hardware in my opinion. But developer friendly, water resistant, priced like all the other big boys, best form factor in the business, and like I said before, really usability of a tablet does come down to its weight, especially in this 10.1 inch class, which really was always a stay-at-home class for me because it simply wouldn't be comfortable to use for long periods of time handheld. This tablet breaks that rule, and that to me is really significant. It's got solid battery life. The specifications will keep it around for quite a while, despite the fact that it doesn't have the best processor, as I've mentioned over and over again. And those cameras, having a waterproof camera on a tablet is pretty cool. I will note that, even though I'm not a fan of using any cameras on a tablet, the fact that we've got a water resistant one here is definitely unique, and that's actually more unique to me than trying to throw this in a bathtub or use it at the beach or in my kitchen. That's definitely a more practical application, which is something I've learned over time with the tablet, because when it's submerged, obviously it's not usable, but when you're just out in the rain, you can still use the tablet, shoot shots, because you know, it's a lot less difficult for it to register false touches from raindrops than, you know, submerged in water from our homes that even when cold still has enough heat for this to pick it up. As I've mentioned, build quality solid. NFC, not really a big thing for me with this tablet, but that's in part because I don't have a lot of Sony's products that are designed to be used with it. If you have a Sony TV, you'll love the functionality here. That's where the throwing really gets done. And obviously the Sony Bluetooth speaker that they sell for it, another good accessory. But if you start buying into that, clearly things are going to get really expensive. But this tablet really does represent the best of the industry right now. The problem is that, as I mentioned earlier, it's a matter of how long will it represent best of industry. And if all it ends up being is great form factor and waterproofing and a great display, I think that'll work for many of you, as I've said earlier. But for those of you who need the best in terms of performance, this may end up coming up short when compared to all of those great products from Asus and Toshiba, even though they're closed in terms of software, and of course the latest Nexus device. I mean, all of these things are just right around the corner. And my highest hopes are really for the new Galaxy Note 10, because I at least hope that Samsung will address what I mentioned earlier, build quality, move away from plastics, incorporate a more solid feeling tablet so that when we do shell down that $500 or $600, we're not just getting best-in-class performance, but also best-in-class design, something that Samsung hasn't done. Sony with this tablet pretty much has, outside of that little glue separation in the back case, which again is not a widespread rampant problem. In fact, the problem I mentioned before with the waterproofing, or the seal on the headphone jack, is probably the biggest complaint, I would say, in manufacturing that people have had, and Sony's been very quick to rectify that, and clearly any retailer that carries it in stock within that return policy that you should seek out, you shouldn't have any problem getting another unit. So really nothing to dislike here outside of what I mentioned, which isn't a very long list. I hope this has helped you guys determine whether or not the Z is the right $500 or $600 Android tablet for you. And I say that because they're still really pricey, and I look forward to the day that these tablets won't be in that price range. But for now, that seems to be where they are going to reside. But with that said, this does offer the best bang for the buck right now in the marketplace. This is the best high-end tablet that money can buy, and I wholeheartedly can endorse it, despite the fact, as I've said over and over, great stuff is about to launch. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.